And with that, I want to have Ed Liberman, who will come up and tell us about why and how you should invest here in Israel. So thank you, Evan.
Thank you all. I know some of you from previous meetings. Yeah, I'll introduce myself in a slide. If you want to hit the lights. Speak up. Okay. If I go into quiet mode, you'll be saying speak up. I'll have you. Okay. So anything we're going to talk about today, of course, maybe future looking, but is not representing investment advising. So I have to say that before I get started as a disclaimer. I'm going to introduce myself, and I was born and raised in the United States. East Coast grew up, West Coast California. When I was 15, I moved here about 30 years ago. So I've experienced what most of you have experienced as far as being an Ole Chadash, Ole Batik, Toshav Chozer, all those I've done. Moved here in 93, married, an Israeli, 3 kids, registered investment portfolio manager with the Securities Authority in Israel. And where I have a firm and staff that is experienced in Israeli and United States investing. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Who had a chance to look at the video? I want to play that. If you haven't had a chance, let's go ahead and play that. Actually get to it. Wow. Technology. I love it. Can you guys see this well enough, or is it dark enough? Pretty much. Interesting, not playing. So we're gonna bounce right into our discussion then. Can you guys read it though? Just give me a quick view of you want to read.
There's one page with a link about
There's a link. I can try the link. Yeah. Let's go ahead and restart that. Normally just plays.
Israel is a nation which is rich in antiquity, bustling with life, and full of opportunity. Throughout their history, they have pushed the limits, beaten the odds, and have become known today as the Miracle Nation. Boasting an economy that is one of the most resilient and vibrant in the world, Israel's open and free market is a shining light of success and sustainability.
Even during seasons of global financial instability and recession, Israel's economy remains surprisingly strong, with positive growth. This booming and secure economic environment is made possible by cultivating a workforce of brilliant people dedicated to creating solutions and determined to succeed.
Israelis are known for not taking no for an answer. This is part of the entrepreneurial spirit that drives innovation, from high-tech energy and construction, communication, defense, and agriculture, and in turn leads to breakthrough and disruptive technologies that have left a monumental and lasting impression on every continent in the world.
Israel's financial market has become one of the most fertile and attractive international investment destinations. And so while we build and we propel Israel forward, we can benefit from its success.
WiseMoney Israel is an Israeli investment firm dedicated to serving our clients and caring for their financial well-being. Whether individuals, corporations, or non-profit organizations from around the globe, we prudently manage our clients' portfolios and guide them into the Israeli capital market.
Having successfully invested hundreds of millions of shekels, WiseMoney Israel has earned its reputation as a trustworthy and secure home for investment capital. Partnering with the largest and most well-known brokerages in Israel, our firm offers stock and bond investing directly on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange.
We assist our clients to diversify their capital by investing in leading Israeli companies in the shekel, giving them an alternative to their local holdings. With a high level of integrity, professionalism, and personal client attention, WiseMoney Israel clients have enjoyed solid returns on their investments year over year.
Not only do we aspire for your investments to succeed, but we want you to succeed as you help Israel lead and shape the world toward a bright and promising future.
future. So invest securely. Think Israel.
All right, so I see that the projector is a little bit light, so I do want you to be able to read the slides. So Gabe is going to go ahead and switch us over to a different slide deck. But I want to go ahead and get started talking about why you would want to invest in Israel. Now, how many people have any investment going on currently in Israel? Okay, not many. Is it through your work?
Yeah.
Okay, like a pension program, that sort of thing. Okay, and most people, in fact, are invested in the Israeli market only that way, not actually investing their own funds, but they're having someone else invest it for them. A lot of people, especially the Anglo-Saxon crowd that we have a lot of clients in Israel that are Anglo-Saxon, and of course a lot of people from abroad, of course they're going to invest anywhere they feel comfortable, and they're coming from the United States, coming from New Zealand, that's where they like to invest. And so what I'm going to try to do today is interest you in why you'd want to invest in our local market, what's good about our local market, what's good about the Israeli economy. And some of you have been here for a few years, some of you have been here for decades. But a lot of people will be in Israel and not recognize how strong the Israeli economy is, what sort of innovation we have here, and of course our market is one of the stronger markets, even though we're not that well known on the global stage. Awesome. So the first thing we're going to talk about is diversification. I'm hopefully going to give you some tips about just general investing, whether it's in Israel or not. Of course, one of the first things when we talk about investing is to diversify. The less you have all your eggs in one basket, probably the better you'll do over time. Sometimes one basket won't work out so well for you. You'll drop the basket. Sometimes it's got too much sun on it, so you want your eggs in that sunlight, so to speak. So there's many ways of diversifying an investment, whether it's real estate investment, cryptocurrency, stocks, bonds, that sort of thing. You want to diversify your investments over different asset classes. So someone was talking with me yesterday about, I want to put all my money into real estate in Israel. I said, I like that market. I have my own home, but I don't know if you want all of your eggs in that basket. Of course, it creates certain problems. If that particular market goes down or you need liquidity, now you've got a problem. So spread your money across a number of different investment styles and classes. You may want to have risk diversification. You may want to have some things that are very risky assets. That's where you're really maybe shoot the moon as far as growth, but that's where you're going to have a lot of risk as well. Let's say I'm not a big fan of cryptocurrency, but there's potential upside, a lot of upside to that. But as you watch the Bitcoin charts, it can also have a lot of loss. So maybe you want to have some in high risk, some in medium risk, and something, let's say, lower risk. Maybe real estate would be considered mid or low risk. Okay. You want to diversify also maybe in duration. Some investments are for the long term. They're your pension program. And some may be for, okay, I just want to make money in the next 2 years because I'm going to go buy a home, get it as high as I can, and the market's a good place. I want to get my money in the short term, and everything in between. You might want to diversify geographically. And the concept here is, I don't want all my eggs in the basket of Israel or America or Europe or China. I want to say, I want a little bit in each. I don't know what's going to happen next in the world. It may hit different geographies differently. For example, right now inflation in Western Europe and the United States is around 9 to 10%. Here it's about 5%. So we're experiencing this world crisis differently than others. Fukushima, if you remember back in 2012, I believe, they had a nuclear disaster after a typhoon, I believe, or something like this. That hit that geography more. We had volcanoes in Iceland, if you recall back in the last decade. Well, that affected airlines, but a lot more in the European space. So if you had all your money in the European space or a lot in that area, you may have been hit worse in your investments, and you want to have more diversified geographically. You may want to get exposure to certain types of companies that may only be sold in certain areas. For example, Israel, the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, has about 500 different stocks that you'll not find anywhere else in the world. So you may want to get diversified just so you can pick out different companies in different markets. And you may also want to have a specific allocation to Israeli companies here in the shekel because that's what you live off of. You want your money in the currency that you live in, and the shekel happens to be one of the stronger currencies in the world. Let's talk about what are some of the larger investors, the more successful ones in the world, saying about Israel. We're going to talk about, anyone heard of Warren Buffett? In the investment world, he's like the guru. He's probably the best investor of our generation. And so what does he have to say about Israel? He says, Israel is the best place to invest because of its people. That's you all. There's no other place with such high quality people with motivations and abilities. Israel has a very positive future. So as far as I know, not Jewish, not a big Zionist. They didn't pay him for this so you can make a little money on the side to say something good about Israel. He just looks at it economically. He says this is a great place to be, specifically because of the human capital that we have here, the innovation that goes on here. Berkshire Hathaway, which is his firm that's probably the most successful investment firm in the last century, bought its first company outside the United States, in fact in Israel, in the north of Israel. They came and bought a manufacturing company, 80% of the stock for, I think, $1 billion. And then he came back a few years later. He was so enchanted by Israel and the company and how they were doing that he bought the last 20% of the shares for double what he bought it for before. And so he's excited about Israel, and that says something. Obviously, there's others that are the billionaires that are buying. But if you look at the companies like IBM, Intel, Google, Apple, Hewlett-Packard, these are the companies that they're looking at Israel as, where's the place to be for innovation? Where's the place to be for human capital growth? Obviously, a lot of people here in technology. We lead the world basically in innovation, especially in technology spaces, various technology spaces that we'll talk about. So a lot of the products that you use on a day-to-day basis, even us as Israelis may not realize they came from here. So Checkpoint, they basically commercialized 20 years ago the first firewalls that the world is using. They're still a leading Israeli company in that space, but now moving into cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, these sorts of areas to secure networks of companies around the world. Anyone heard of Mobileye? Help you to drive so you don't run off the road and hit some cars. It's basically computerized vision systems. Those are being put in. That was bought by Intel recently. So that's an Israeli invention to keep everyone on the road. Waze, of course, the social navigation system that everyone uses around the world. That was purchased, it was an Israeli company, purchased by Google for $1.3 billion last few years. And that's what's running our Google Maps today. Okay? Amazon Kindle, Disk on Key, Intel processors, all of that technology comes from Israelis and Israeli companies. SodaStream, if anyone uses that, that's also an Israeli company bought by Pepsi. So you see a lot of the innovations happening. They grow Israeli companies, they exit and sell them to the large multinationals. And then multinationals are here with a presence to take them to take our technology to the next level. For better or for worse, Israelis don't know how to grow huge companies, multinational companies very well. WhatsApp, so the whole concept of ICQ, which is 20 years ago, if anyone remembers, that's how we used to do messaging, instant messaging. Well, it's grown into also things like WhatsApp today, and then all of that ICQ, WhatsApp, it's all Israeli technology based on voice over IP technology, which is also Israeli technology. Skype, the voice technology used there is also an Israeli company as well, started with Vocaltech 20 years ago when I worked in high tech. Israel's impacting other places, other market segments, maybe not in the public space, but in the private space. So if we're talking about water conservation, desalination, as you probably all know, this is where an area that we lead the world in and are selling our technologies around the world. Defense, national security, Iron Dome, obviously is the envy of other nations as far as missile technology. The airlines, why is El Al the safest airline? Because they have anti-missile technology that they can now market to the rest of the world. Medical innovations, on the left bottom you'll see the ReWalk system, which is literally taking people that can't walk, paraplegics, and giving them a robotic skeleton, exoskeleton, in which the lame can walk. So that's quite a revolution there. Green energy, transportation technology, literally this machine here at the bottom right is taking taking air and extracting water from it. So you can plug this in a village or in Africa where there's no potable water, there's no wells, and it can literally draw the humidity out of the air into drinking water. So these are some of the technologies that we're good at. Okay, cyber technology, of course, as well. So we lead the world in artificial intelligence technologies, semiconductor technologies, voice recognition, not only internet security, but of course militarily security, because we have to. That's what we develop. Our unique and strong economy, we may not recognize that even though we're only 9 million people, our economy is one of the better ones. If you compare economic data, that we're actually leading the world. We have a AA- rating from S&P. If you look at the rating agencies around the world, the leading international rating agencies, Moody's, Standard & Poor's, and Fitch, They're rating Israel very, very high, and what's interesting about this is we're not yet at the United States level. We're not leading the world. They used to be AAA. We're not AAA yet, but then they lost their rating of AAA. If you recall, in the global recession in 2008, 2009, they started to lose that 50-year mark of ultra secure. They're downgraded to AA plus, and at the same years, we've been upgraded a number of notches, so now we're competitive with the United States as well. We've been ranked number 1 for inflation stability. We're seeing some of that play out now. We're not as stable now. We used to have sub 1% inflation for years, but now we're creeping up slower in inflation, so we're doing well in that as well. We're a lender nation. The United States is a borrower nation. Our central bankers are among the best in the world. Stanley Fischer, those of you who heard about him a few years ago, he is actually the thesis professor for Ben Bernanke, who led everyone through the global recession. He was his teacher. We have a growing population, low unemployment. These are some of the things that economists look for to say, why would I want to invest in this particular geography, this particular market, this particular people? Well, they look at these economic measures, especially gross domestic product, GDP. How much is a country growing in its income, its ability to innovate and create jobs, create income? What we see here is, I don't know how well you can see from where you're sitting, but we've got the years from 2004 onward. We see 3 columns. The first column on the left is Israel, dark blue. Then we see the OECD nations. Anyone know what that is? It's a group of about 38 developed nations, and the most developed and leading economies in the world: the United States, and Japan, and Britain, and France, and all these nations. And so we're in the OECD nations as well. So the OECD column in the middle doesn't have as much GDP growth as we do by far. So we're leading the developed world in our gross domestic product growth. And the United States is the third one, so by far we're definitely leading the United States as far as how much we're growing as a country, which is where you want to invest. You want to not invest in a country that's contracting over time. What's interesting to see here with this chart is in 2008, the global recession, how well did our growth do, or how bad were we hurt during that period of lack of growth? The rest of the world was shrinking by about 4 to 6%, if you recall those years. We never went into recession during the global recession. What is recession? As we all come to learn in the last few months, 2 quarters of consecutive negative growth. We didn't even have 1 quarter of negative growth during that period. So we didn't actually technically go through a recession during the global recession. Doesn't mean the markets don't go down during that time. That's more psychological and fear coming into the market. But as far as growth, we continue to grow even through that recession. Last crisis was, of course, the Corona crisis here in 2020. We did contract like the rest of the world, but less. The left column you'll see is 2% contraction versus 4. And then we came out roaring with an 8.2% growth year following, which outstripped a lot of the other countries. So between those 2 years, we're still at about a 5% global rate of growth, including this year. We're looking at about a 4.9% growth this year, whereas, let's say, the United States and other nations are worried about not having any growth next year. Another thing we look at, and we'll get into investing in a little bit, but we first want to talk about why would I invest at all in Israel? I want to invest in a place with a strong economy. We look at debt to GDP. Debt to GDP is how much am I growing? That's my GDP growth. Okay, but how much am I financing that through debt? If I've got a large income, let's say I'm a family, but I also have a large debt, okay, and I'm paying it all back to the bank, really I don't have any worth at all, and I'm very much leveraged, so I might not have a good chance of survival if some of those numbers change. So you look at a debt to GDP ratio, and you're looking for, if possible, under 100%. What you're gaining in a year, you're not paying off in debt. Okay, you want to be in lower percentages. Israel is the blue bars here. As you see over the last 2 decades approximately, Israel has been reducing its national debt, okay, by far, compared to its GDP growth, which is high. So we're lowering our debt, increasing our income, and so our debt to GDP ratio went all the way down to about 68% before Corona. It came back up, but we're still at an enviable 69% growth to debt to GDP ratio. Enviable for all the other countries, like the United States, which is actually this dotted line. You'll see here was doing okay. They still had it on this axis, about a 70% debt to GDP growth. It was good 20 years ago. But as we hit the global recession, printing of money, TARP programs, if those of you remember how bad it was, that they were just printing, it was unthinkable to print a $700 billion amount of money to bail people out, in that case, bail Wall Street out. Now you got a $1 trillion program, it's no big deal. So they just keep printing money. In fact, 80% of the US dollars have been printed ever in the history of the United States have been printed in the last few years, last 2 years. And so we've got a runaway debt story going there in the United States. Here we're lowering our debt, and if you heard Victor Liberman, who's not related to Evan Liberman, he declared that the government this year in Israel is actually in the plus, surplus income is higher than our expenses as a country. So we're actually in a net positive place for probably the first time in 40 years. How we do during inflation. It's important, of course, to know when I'm investing and I'm making 10% on my investment, let's say over a year, that I'm not going backwards by inflation by 5%. You want to look at that story there of how much is the not only the economy growing, but how much is the currency shrinking back because of inflation. Okay, so here we'll take a look. I don't know if you can see it from the back here, but Israel is still at about a 5% rate, whereas the rest of the nations this year at Canada, UK, United States, OECD, in general, up at 9-10% ratio. So we're doing well from an inflation perspective. How's the shekel doing? Who knows the exchange rate of shekel to dollar today? I'm just curious who tracks these things. One person.
3.31.
3.31. All right, 3.23. So the shekel keeps strengthening even after it rebounded back up to 3.5. And the shekel is over the long pole the last 20 years, appreciated, grown against the U.S. dollar by 40%, over 40%. So just over the slow period of time, about 2-3% on average. The shekel is the stronger currency. You want to be in the stronger currency, especially if you're going to buy things that are denominated in dollars. Okay, or just in general, when you travel, you want to have a strong currency. If we look, for those of you, anyone comes from the UK or lived in the UK, they're obviously having a hard time with their currency. We're now down to less than 4 pounds to the dollar. I remember when it was 8, just maybe a decade ago. So if you sorry. The GBP, the pound is now at 4 shekels to the pound versus 8. Okay, so essentially it's shrunk half of its value against the shekel just in the last number of years. If we look over 16 years, the shekel has been growing against the pound by over 100%, 107%. All right. So if you're in pounds, and especially if you're in pounds not invested to make some money, you're just in the pound going backwards, not only against the shekel, but of course inflation in the UK is about 9%. So not a great place to have just pounds sitting around doing nothing. Now we're going to get into some investment measures. Now we're going to compare some of the markets. How does the Israeli market do? I could go until I'm blue in the face, tell you how great Israel is doing, how innovative we are, how great people we are. Look at this great economy, look at the inflation story. But if we're not going to make money on my investments, I don't want to be in that market, no matter how good the currency is. So how do we do compared to a few of the other markets? So this is the stock market performance since the year 2003, so almost 2 decades. If we take a look at, on the right side, we've got the stocks, European stocks 50. That only made about 57% over 20 years. Nothing to write home about. Maybe 2% compounded annual growth rate. We're going in the Hebrew direction from the right to the left. We'll take the UK FTSE 100. How much is the London stock market going up over those years? 89%. Not bad, not great. United States market, S&P 500, if you're familiar with that index, a broad index of the largest leading stocks in America, made 372% over 20 years. Not bad. It's about, I figured out before, I think it's 13% compounded annual growth rate. It's been doing well for 20 years. But if you look at it compared to Israel, on a shekel basis, just a shekel basis of the Tel Aviv 125 index, a comparable index of large cap stocks, we by far have done better than the S&P in a shekel terms. If you would put in $100,000 and just translated them into shekels, put them in the market, on a shekel basis, you'd have about 6 times as much as you had before. Your $100,000 now, $600,000 put into our market here. Just tracking, not even having a portfolio manager like myself, but just putting it in an index tracking fund, you'd be doing well. But then if you were to translate that back to the dollar, now we're talking about let's add not only our market, but let's add how much the shekel is adding to our global wealth. Now we're looking at about 8 times, or 755%, more than 8 times growth on our money. How does some people here are into real estate, especially last meeting or 2. I saw a lot of real estate brokers and people that are into real estate, and that's a good market to be in Israel, of course. But if we were to take a look, how does the Tel Aviv real estate market do versus the Tel Aviv real estate stock index? I mean, if I wanted real estate, but I didn't want to put it into a house in which I have less cost to get in, less cost to get out. I want to put it in something that's in the real estate market, the builders of Israel. Okay, they're making the money on real estate more than anybody. I would have made 378% on my money in the Tel Aviv real estate index, versus if I put it into a home, I would have made 122% on the appreciation of my home if I had rented it out. If I had not rented it out and I just lived in it, probably closer to 65% compared to 388% comparable growth in the market on the Tel Aviv real estate stock index. So even if you look at, I want to be in real estate, you can do it through the capital market, have full liquidity. Okay, long-term performance of the stock market. So if we look over since the last crisis, 2009, the Israeli Tel Aviv 125 index has given a 10% year-over-year compounded annual growth rate. What is compounding? Anyone know what compounding is or heard the term? Tech guys? Okay. Basically, you take your money and your money grows on itself. You earn some interest, and that interest now can grow itself and become principal that it grows its own interest. So it's having children, and they're able to have more children, and then suddenly your farm, you've got 20 workers. Well, your money is doing the same thing. So if you take 10%, you take your $100, you put it in 100 shekels, sorry, taking dollar terms, take your 100 shekels, you now got 110 shekels, you earn 10%, I got 110 shekels. So now my 10 shekels and my 100 shekels working for me. The next year, therefore, they both make 10%. So I made 10 more shekels, and then I made another shekel on my 10, on my interest. Now I got 121 shekels. So it's not 100, 110, 120, 130. It's 100, 110, 121, 132, 144. And then that way you compound your growth such that 10% growth over 7 years actually doubles your money. You think it only gives you 70%, actually doubles your money. The more you can make, the more years you can keep it in, making high growth, your compounding effect actually creates more wealth. So about 10% every year on an average basis. If you looked at smaller cap, mid cap stocks, a little more risky, you would return 12% to yourself every year. And even if you wanted solid bonds, you wanted corporate bonds, what does a corporate bond 60 index do in Israel? 5% year over year. So that's a solid way of making just a good income in the shekel. On a shekel basis, 5%, on a dollar basis, probably a lot more. So let's review before we get into the practice of how to invest in Israel. We talked about having diversification of asset classes, geographies, currencies. We talked about Israel being one of the most innovative countries in the world and how you can get involved in the Israeli investment market to take advantage of some of these innovations that are coming out only from Israel. The multinational firms and billionaire investors see the strength of Israel, so if we want to follow who already knows how to do investment well, we just look at what they're doing. What are these companies doing? They're focusing on Israel for their investments. In that case, investing in buying companies in Israel, bringing their businesses here, hiring Israelis. That's where they're putting their money, where their mouth is. We have a strong economy. We talk about that. AA minus rated, low government debt, high GDP growth, low inflation, strong currency, all these things. There's other reasons why some people would like to invest in Israel. And some of our clients are abroad, and so they may not want their money in shekels because they live here, but they may be Zionists. They may be wanting to fight the BDS movement, if you're familiar with the boycott, sanctions, and divestment, trying to take money out of Israel. This is actually a way to go anti-BDS. You may want to support Israeli companies, Israeli people. The world demand for technology is not stopping. You may want to be in some technology of Israel and get on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. And one of the unique things we have in our bond market is many of the bonds are tied to inflation, inflation protected. You don't see that a lot, for example, in the United States market. It's hard to get corporate bonds that are tied to inflation. When inflation runs away from you, as it has started to do in the United States, even here at 5.2%, you want to make sure that your money is growing with inflation. So if you're getting a 2% interest payment plus inflation, and inflation is 5%, now you're getting 7 shekels on your 100 investment. Inflation is 10%, you're getting 2 plus 10, 12 shekels on your 100 investment. So you want to keep up with inflation, and you can do that here. So how and where do we invest in Israel? Now it gets to the practice. How do I go do this? When I came here, I realized that people don't know how to invest in Israel, in the English language for sure. And what they know is from America. How do you apply that to here? And that's why I started WiseMoney Israel. At the very beginning, it was just to educate people from a website. How do we get actually involved and invested here? So everyone invests on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. It's a little misnomer. It services all of Israel for one national exchange. It probably should be called the Israel Exchange. It does more than stock. It does also bonds, ETFs, mutual funds. And it started trading before the current, the modern nation of Israel started in 1935. When we became a nation, it got called the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, 1953, regulated by the Knesset and by the Israel Securities Authority, where we hold our license. And again, here's the numbers of just how much is out in the market. It's not a small market from the choices that you have and all the various sectors to invest in. So whatever you would find as sectors in your country of origin, you'd find them as well here. There's a lot of initial public offerings of small companies that want to become public. They want to come out to the world and have people invest in them. There's been more initial public offerings, a lot of tech companies in this last year, record year, more than 6 years combined. So we've got also IPOs coming to market every week. The total market capitalization, about 2.3 trillion shekels, is in the market in the companies. Traded about 6.7 billion shekels every day. So we're talking about you get your money in, you get your money out quickly. Very liquid market. And there's also some increase of interest in our market, specifically because of the Abraham Accords from our various Arab neighbors to invest here as well. The breakdown, as I said, according to sector, there's technology, real estate, energy, oil, financial services, banks, insurance, everything you would expect. If you wanted to focus on a particular area or more weight that area in your diversified portfolio, you can have that here with our market as well. How do we invest in the market here? Well, I can't just go and say I want to trade with Shlomo and here's my money, give me a stock certificate. Obviously it's all electronic and done through what are called Tel Aviv Stock Exchange members. There's a very small group of companies that have been in business, most of them for 40 years, that trade between themselves, and you have an account with one of those trading partners. Whether you have an account with one of the 12 Israeli banks that have a presence on the market and they electronically exchange for you, or 6 Israeli brokerages, and that's what we focus on actually, though the fees are much less, and we'll get into that. Those are having membership on the exchange. There's also some foreign banks and remote members as well that want to get access to our market. There are many different investment styles, and some of these might talk to you, some of you more than others. You can be a self-directed trader. I want to do it myself. I know how to pick stocks, I know how to pick bonds, I know how to diversify. I want to do it myself. There's those that want to have an advised account. They go into a bank, an investment advisor, and they say, well, this is generally what I want. Can you give me some advice? I'll go and do it myself. They want tips. And then there's other people that say, I don't know any of that. I just want a company that has a license that's going to manage my money for you. So there's many ways of investing in the market.
What sort of companies make their IPO on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange? Because I know a lot of Israeli companies just go straight to the New York Stock Exchange,
right,
to the NASDAQ. Like, who are the companies that are saying no?
Okay, so there's a lot of the tech information technology companies go to NASDAQ. Okay, there's cannabis companies, there's alternate energy companies, there's biomedical companies. There's a lot of them that come to the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. And as of recent, it's been an increase of how many local companies are actually coming to the local market, probably because of Corona. There was probably a slowdown of interest in coming here to check out the companies, so, especially in venture capital specifically. But I can get you a list of that if you want, or we can go on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange and see the actual names of who's been listing recently. There's those people that are want to do day trading. There's that want long-term investing. Okay, I just want to make money. I don't care what I'm investing in. I'm just going to look at charts. Or I want to be a long-term investor. I'll put my money in. I know it's going to grow for the long term. I'm not going to mess with them. Individual securities. Some people want to know I'm investing in individual companies, and some people say I just want the benefit of putting it in a market index. And I'm going to take the 125 largest companies. Some might be good, some might be bad. I just want to have an average, and I don't want to have to mess with that. So there's that sort of style type. Israel. I want Israeli-focused stocks in the sense of they're all Israeli-focused. They're all Israeli companies there on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, but I want them focused on shekels. I want to only invest in companies that are listed here. So now we're not talking about Tel Aviv per se, but I'm saying if I'm an Israeli, I may want to focus on my local market, my local companies. But I may be an Israeli who says, I want global exposure. I want exposure to China. And yes, you can have that also through an investment account here and trade abroad. There are obviously different styles of investment. How much risk do I want to take? Do I want to be a solid investor? Okay, I might want to be more in bonds, therefore. Or I may want to be a risky investor. I want to be more in stocks there. And I want to be solid versus aggressive in my approach. So the self-directed accounts, let's talk about that. I just want to trade. Obviously, this is not my specialty. We manage clients' accounts. But if I wanted to start, especially with a small amount, just get my feet wet in the market, maybe put an index tracking fund, how do I do that? So I can go to a bank, I go to a bank, and they don't have minimums, stated minimums, okay? But if you try to get some advice from them, they'll want you to be, let's say, 100, 150,000 shekels plus. Okay, that's the cheap way of getting in. They make their money not through minimums, things like that. They make it through the fees. If you've looked at your bank statements and realized how many fees they're doing, when you get into investments, even more so. Lots of fees at the banks. That's why we choose the brokerages. These are some of the names of the brokerages that you could open your account with, most of which start at 20,000 shekels. It's not a huge barrier of entry. So at least get a self-directed account that you will invest in yourself. The custodial fees, what am I going to pay to invest in the market? Brokerages will have no fees to, on an ongoing basis, have an account with them. Some of them have a 20 shekel monthly charge, but if you're talking about significant funds, that's nothing. Banks, though, can have a 0.6, 0.8%, almost 1% of your investment account is going to the bank just to hold your account. So that's one of the reasons why banks, you might want to think twice about that. You can negotiate some of that for, let's say, for the next year, I'll get a discount. But then you have to renegotiate every year. Transaction fees are relatively low at brokerages. They go up to 0.1%. I invest 1,000 shekels. That will cost me 1,110, 1 shekel. Okay, maybe a minimum will kick in, but then the minimums will be much lower with the brokerages as well. Banks can go all the way up to 0.4% with a high minimum. So managing accounts, we manage clients that start as low as $75,000 US and above. We have different levels for different management fees. You can talk to me afterwards about that. Non-pension account types in Israel. You can have an account as individual, as a joint. That can be joint married couple, father-daughter, son, that sort of thing. You can set up a corporate account as well. We have a lot of those. Or you can set up an organization, a non-profit that has some spare cash and wants to invest it until it goes and does what it wants to do with that money. All those types you can open in Israeli accounts. In general terms, I listed here those that support English and those that don't. That's usually people's reticence to get in the market. Do they not know what to do there as far as investors? Okay, so maybe they want to manage an account. But even if they did know what they're doing, a lot of the information is in Hebrew on the websites of the banks, the brokerages, the financial news is in Hebrew. So you want a brokerage or a bank that's going to support English if that's the language that you prefer to deal with your money in. And so there's a lot that do support English. You see that's in the right column. Most of the brokerages support English on their trading platform. We only work with brokerages that support Hebrew and English for their agreements and their reports and things like that. Most of the banks, some of the banks do support English, some don't. Okay, so when you invest, question?
Which is the best one?
Great question. We prefer the top two. That's why I put them at the top. Find they have the lowest fees, they have the best customer support, they support English-speaking clients really well.
Hello.
Yeah.
Is there an online investment thing here like Pardes lands down in the UK where you just do everything yourself, choose your stocks, no fees? Does they have anything like that here?
Is there something like you can put in
It's
investment?
called Hargreaves Lansdowne in London, and it's very, very, very successful. And so it's basically aimed, I think, at small traders, and you choose. They of course they offer baskets, spread risk,
Right.
but all sorts of they trade on everything. But you can just do it online. You don't have to go to a bank or to anywhere else.
Okay, there are things like that here. If you want someone to put together baskets for you, they're going to charge a fee for that. If you're talking about a mutual fund or algo-traded fund, algorithmic traded fund, you can go to one of these brokerages and they may have some of those services available
I'm
to
trying to
you.
avoid brokerage.
Sorry? You're saying?
I'd like to avoid that.
Okay, avoiding a bank or brokerage, you can't trade on the market. In other words, the market is made up of these 24 Tel Aviv Stock Exchange members, banks, brokerages, and insurance companies. You have to have an account with one of them. You can open, now going to the online, you can open an account at an Israeli brokerage online. Okay, they have forms to do that. You don't have to go and identify yourself to a bank or brokerage personnel. So that's one of the services we offer, is we'll help people open investment accounts. If they're going to have it managed with us, we'll walk them through that process, so they never have to leave their house to open an investment account. It takes about 35 minutes to open an account. Okay, so what happens when I invest through a bank or through a brokerage? Where's my money? Okay, I want to know where my money is. Basically, if I have cash and it's at a bank, that's sitting there at a bank. If I have it at a brokerage, they take the cash of clients and they have to divide it between 6 other banks, and they cannot invest your money in their accounts. Whereas a bank can do fractional lending, they can actually lend out your cash. Brokerages don't do that, they can't lend out the money, so you know that's secure. But once you have that cash actually purchasing securities for you, whether you're doing self-directed or having a money manager do that for you, once I take 1,000 shekels and I put it into a stock, that stock is now listed under my name electronically, centrally at the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange itself. So you don't have to worry about even where am I putting my money as far as I'm wiring my money to IBI, and it's a brokerage, or putting my money in the bank. Well, once I buy a security, it's actually outside the hands of the bank or the brokerage. So it's a central exchange. So even if one of the banks or the brokerages, which have never failed, were to fail in Israel, then that doesn't mean that I have a risk to my security not suddenly being lost. They don't actually hold the securities, definitely not physically, but even in ownership name, they don't hold it. So that's the security for your brokerage. You don't wire your funds to a money manager. Anyone who wants to hold your money and say, wire it to my bank account, stay away from that. They're probably not licensed. Stay away from that. Any bank or brokerage they receive the funds themselves. Your money goes directly to the bank or the brokerage where it's held for investment. You can have a money manager, have a limited power of attorney to manage your account. That your money is housed not with the money manager. The financial advisor, as I said, has a limited power of attorney. He doesn't hold the fund. He can't withdraw the funds. So the funds are yours in your name, at your brokerage or bank, and ultimately whatever you own is essentially listed at the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. Like I said, if you're looking for a money manager, you go to the ISA website, isa.gov.il. And the Israel Securities Authority has a very good list of who's the investment advisors, who's portfolio managers, and where the portfolio management firms. There's about 100 firms like our own that have a license to money manage. What's the process? I'll talk about our process, how a managed account onboarding process would work. You do a video conference with our new account consultants. You complete your forms online. You'd sign electronically, meaning you don't have to go anywhere, print anything out. You would wire your funds directly to your bank or brokerage. You would work with someone like myself to work out, okay, do I want the aggressive portfolio? Do I want it managed in tech more than in banks? Do I want it in stocks? Do I want it in bonds? What's my need for liquidity? Okay, I have an event coming up the next year that I'm going to need half these funds. These are the type of things we go through to set up the guidelines of how we're going to manage your funds over time. We would determine your investment objectives and then build a tailored account that works for you. That's one of the advantages of actually a small firm. We're only 3 staff, but we can make therefore specific tailored portfolios for other clients. Whereas in other brokerages, you're basically in a class of thousands of investors. They'll say, okay, you're 75% stock, 25% bond. Thank you very much. We're putting you in this class of 20,000 people, and they're not actually managing your money per se. They're not going to be there when you say, I want this and I want that, and I heard about this particular stock, alternate energy stock. Can I go in that? And they're like, no, you're in this class. Ongoing care will obviously invest your funds over time. This is taking advantage of when there's market weakness, where you go in more and make you money over time. We beat the averages quite handily, which I'll show in the next slide. You can have online access to your brokerage platform for you to look yourself. How's my money doing? You look at pie charts, you can look at graphs, you can look at what you own, you can look at each stock out or bond, how it's doing. You can look at the transactions performing on your behalf. That is in English or in Hebrew. We only work with those that will support English as well. We do a video call with clients once every year. You get customer service and English and Hebrew tax reports that are provided yearly. Why would you invest in a firm like ours? We're local. Our office is about 10 minutes from here. We focus on English-speaking clients. We have clients from about 30 different nations, including Israel. What is unique about them is they're all English-speaking countries. We manage about 180 million shekels of client funds, speaking both languages, and I'll stop pumping on ourselves at this point. Our performance, though, is the real place where the reason you want a manager is you're going to pay us a fee, maybe only percent 0.2, something like that. But you're going to want us to outperform the market that you could do yourself. You put it in a tracking fund that just tracks the averages and get a certain return. So here's a comparison between the Tel Aviv 125, okay, over the last 3 calendar years. How well has it done? On a shekel basis, it's done well. Tel Aviv 125, including the year of Corona in 2020, still, even with that return, 54% over 3 years. We're talking about really good performance, basically 2019, 2021. great years in the stock market. But if we look what we were able to do even after the fees that we charged, we by far outperformed it. And for those clients that are thinking, I have dollars, I'm going to either invest it in the United States or I'm going to invest it here, if you had invested just at LD 125, but then translated it back to the dollar, you would have gained 86% of the dollar. So your 100,000, you put it in the market, it was 350,000 shekels, you invested at LD 125, and you come back out, and now suddenly in the dollar terms, you've got 186,000 US dollars. Of course, we will outperform that as well. Okay, so I wanted to open an investment account. What do? Speak with me afterwards, or I can give you a business card, give me an email, give me a phone call, we'll do a video call, and we'll get started with that, or go on our website, wisemoneyisrael.com, and click on the contact us. Now I do want to go to questions. I see you had a question. Let me go to one who doesn't have a question. I'll come back to Yaakov. Yes?
What's your minimum?
Okay, the stated minimum is $75,000 US dollars or local equivalent. That's if you go to the pricing page of the website. For Israelis, because we can do an online process, it's easier for us. We go all the way down to $50,000, which is about 160,000 shekels. Right?
So
As you make more, as you have more money, our fee is also more down. Yeah.
Are you able to manage money for a U.S. retirement fund in Israel?
Great question. Are you able to manage a U.S. IRA? We have a brokerage platform which has access to Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, but is not an Israeli company. It's an American company, which is an IRA custodian, and they are able to invest in the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. So yes, we do have a solution for that.
Okay.
That was my question. Yeah.
And then I have a follow-up.
Sure.
Can a U.S. LLC invest in
Yes.
stocks? Is that easier?
Yeah. So essentially, no, both are the same. Basically, it's the first is an individual account, and the second is a corporate account. They both act in the same way. The difference is the sign-up process. A corporation has to show documentation of who they are, letter of corporation, that sort of thing. Whereas an individual shows it to that's guilty. But other than that, everything as far as the accounts, the way it's managed, what you invest in, the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, and shekels is all the same. All right, back to Yaakov.
Okay. As far as the IRA,
Yeah.
what does it cost to get out of one's current IRA and then move it over? What's the
Moving a U.S. IRA from one IRA custodian to another is free, no tax implications on it. If you're just moving custodians in the United States, which is what we have a lot of people doing, Fidelity, for example, will hold their IRA. They say, I'm investing in American stocks on the dollar. I want to get out of the dollar. I want to invest in Israel. So they'll transfer to a rollover IRA essentially, and that can roll over all kinds of different IRAs to a brokerage that does do business with Israel. They'll liquidate their securities and convert to shekels and invest in Israeli companies. But all of that is free and not taxable.
and for an investment account, what's the loss of transferring over an investment account in America to your company?
You're saying we only deal with Israeli investments.
Right.
So if someone who's rolling over, let's say an IRA, we want to get them to cash at some
Right.
point.
But if I have an investment account and be able to invest in Israeli in shekels through you,
Right.
what does it cost? What's the loss of liquidating my regular investment account?
Okay, so if you're liquidating an investment account, of course, it's going to depend on your brokerage, let's say in the United States, what they're going to cost as far as transactions. Transaction fees are very, very low here and in the United States. So if, for example, we're trading even Israeli securities, maybe it costs us a few shekels to liquidate securities. So we're not talking about that's the fee at all. It's when you sell, if you're selling at a loss, let's say you're selling now versus selling in January, that's where you're going to take the hit. It translates your paper loss, which you're down right now, in your account probably from the beginning of the year, but you'll actually lock that in and make a realized loss. That's the only downside to selling now to go into shekels, is you're going to realize that loss.
You pay taxes on
You only pay taxes on the gains.
profits.
So if you're at a loss, you won't have the tax burden. In fact, you'll carry forward that loss into next year to offset gains. So we have a client, for example, that's exactly in that situation. They've got an account in America, like $1 million, but they're down from the beginning of the year. I say, okay, you want to be in Israel, you want to be in the shekel, you want to be out of the dollar, specifically because of inflation. But he doesn't want to sell at a loss. He wants to wait till it comes back up, and that's may happen, probably will happen eventually. But I said, actually, you can consider taking the loss to get out of the dollar at 9% inflation. Have that loss compensate the gains that you're going to have, hopefully in the shekel and in Israel, and therefore next year's tax picture will look really good because you'll have all these losses built up to compensate for all these gains and not pay any taxes.
So it's actually a good move.
It can be a
sounds
good move.
counterintuitive.
Yeah, loss harvesting. Okay, other questions? Yes, to that.
I got a couple.
Sure.
In regards to IPOs,
Yeah.
is there a way to invest pre-IPO? Do you support that?
Great question. Obviously, an IPO is when they first come to market. There'd be a small capitalization stock in the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. Any investment account can invest therefore in that company. Before they're in IPO, especially a lot of technology startups go through various stages before they're publicly listed and have to give a lot of disclosure. And so it's private companies. There is something new in this Tel Aviv Stock Exchange called Taste Up, and they're starting to offer stocks in small companies that's tradable through the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, even though they're not public companies. There's very few and far between. In fact, I looked yesterday and I saw 3 so far. One cannabis, one something else, I'm not sure the other one was. But yes, it's becoming available, the ability for regular investors to invest like the venture capital firms in startups. The unfortunate thing is you have to still be an accredited investor. Just like you're in venture capital, if you want to invest in a startup company, you usually have to have hundreds of thousands of dollars to invest in the company, first of all, so it's not for the small players. And usually you want to invest, $250,000 in 10, 20 companies, so that one makes the big exit that pays off all the rest. But even with Taste Up, you have to be an accredited investor, which usually means $250,000 income per year in a certain knowledge of the financial market. So it's coming on board, but it's not so easy still for the regular investor who's not accredited. Okay? Question?
Do you have any recommendations for small investments?
Wait, how much is small? We've got clients that small for them is called $100,000.
Like 1,000 shekels or here or there?
Okay, that I actually probably would recommend a bank, an investment advisor, because they don't have the minimums. That's where I would go with that. And I would probably lean toward an exchange traded fund, which trades on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, like the Tel Aviv 125, for example. Get broad-based with your investments. Try not to go, I want this one stock or these 2 stocks. That's a good way to likely lose a lot of that money. Okay?
You were talking about your good results in the last 3 years.
Yes.
What's your investment philosophy? You got 500 stocks to choose from.
Okay, great question. Great question. So we have a process. We do our own internal research. We start with the list of Israeli companies, both here in the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, about 500 different companies, and there's about 100 that are dual listed or only listed on Wall Street and a few other places in the world. And so we take that universe. We have our own proprietary algorithm that looks through and does financial analysis on all the financial ratios. We're what's called a fundamental analysis-based firm, not technical analysis, meaning we're looking at, are these strong companies with strong balance sheets making growing revenues, growing EBITDA, which is earnings? Do they have a good debt picture? Are they heavily indebted? There's lots of financial ratios that deal with these things. Technical analysis, we utilize that to know when to go in and when to go out of a stock. Okay, that's what we can look at charts all the time. You care less what the chart represents as far as the company or what industry you're in. You're just looking to buy low and sell high, buy low and sell high. We're not in that game, but we will look at that once we've chosen a stock based on fundamental measures. So we have about 13 different measures that we go over. We put them all together and rank companies. Those that come out in the top 20 percentile, we'll now take a look at those specific companies. What industries are they in? Read their financial reports, look more and get what's called color. In other words, look at some of the things that you can't get at with numbers. And then we'll make your investments in about 25 different stocks at any given time. As we track them over time, we'll take some in, take some out. Over time though, we're talking about over the space of a year or 2, we're rotating, but we'll have stocks that are 3, 4 years in the portfolio because we're basically a buy and hold, if we can, both in stocks and in bonds. We do make changes over time. That's what you're paying us to do. Especially when there's times of stress in the market, that's when we need to be contrarian, and that's where we're going to make money. That's what we made in Corona when the market finished between -3 and -11% here. We finished at a +11%, and that's how we were doing. Not just that we're able to pick what we feel like are the best 25 out of the bunch, but also we're picking the time we're coming into the market with buying those stocks for clients, and when we're taking profits.
Why do you focus on the dual listed companies?
We don't focus on them actually. We bring them into our universe of stocks. If they're Israeli companies but happen to decide to list on NASDAQ, let's say they're a tech company, I'll take Checkpoint's a great example. They're not dual listed, they're only listed on Wall Street, But since we're kind of a Zionistic firm, we believe that Israel is the place that we want to support, and therefore an Israeli company that happens to choose to list elsewhere, we're still open to that. So for example, today out of 25 companies, we have 3 that are Israeli companies listed on Wall Street.
But if a company is only listed on TASE, you won't.
We definitely focus on that. Almost all Israeli companies are listed only on TASE. So most of our companies are in fact Israeli companies only listed here on the TASE. All right, Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. Yes.
You might have covered this, but so there's investing for appreciation, investing for income.
Mm-hmm.
Do you do both for clients?
Absolutely. We have clients on this risk spectrum from 80-year-olds. This is their only funds that they have. It's their retirement, and so they're very much in fixed income, only bonds. In general, you invest in corporate bonds, not government bonds, because that's where the yield is. They're getting a fixed return. Bonds pay out here for the most part once a quarter, versus stocks. Let's say we have multi-millionaire, and they're going to take a couple $100,000, throw it at Israel. For them, it's no big deal. I'm going to take the maximum risk, and I'm going to get 100% in stocks. So we have both. Now, you can get a cash flow also from a stock portfolio. Many of the stocks in Israel pay some form of dividend, which is similar to a bond paying interest. It's not guaranteed that you're going to get those dividends all the time, increasing dividends necessarily over years. But in general, it works similar to a bond, as I'm getting my cash flow all the time. It's falling to my cash line, and I can withdraw it any time back to my bank, fee-free, free of fees. Yeah?
We're in a region that sees war pretty often.
Sorry?
We're in a region that sees war, conflicts pretty often.
Yes.
How does that affect the stock market here in Israel?
Great question. I have frequently asked questions that has a chart. Okay, so this is the last, 20 years of the stock market, Tel Aviv 125 in this case, I believe. And here are the various events that occurred that caused major stress in the market. The ones that are in nature security-based or war-based are not the ones that actually create most of the stir in the stock market. The volatility from the stock market is actually based on global economic downturn. And so if we take a look here at Lebanon war, it's right on the edge here, but basically it didn't really go down at all, okay? Then we've got Operation, I think it's Lebanon War 2. Operation Cast Lead in Gaza, it already started at the bottom here, and it didn't really make much of an impact, that war. The global recession is what caused this big trough, okay? We recovered within about a year and a half, okay? But still, that's where it came from, global recession. Operation Pillar Defense, no change. In fact, usually what happens is during the middle of whatever operation there is, it'll be a short-lived thing. When it's determined that it's probably gonna be a short-lived war and we're gonna win, then the market starts to come back up. Gaza, Operation Protective Edge. In the last one in Gaza, I looked, it was about 6% down in the stock market, and it took maybe a week or two to recover. So those are not the events, even though people think they are, they don't affect the stock market. And why is that? Because a war, as bad as it is from a human perspective, political perspective, human suffering, everyone's going to bomb shelters, we experience that as people. The market experiences economic changes. And if we're not talking about a nuclear bomb going off and taking out buildings and the economy and shutting down the workforce for too many days, then it's really not going to affect the economy much at all. Okay? Any other questions? Last one. All right.
How often do IPOs actually succeed and become big and not just stay small?
1 in over 10. Well, I see what you're saying. I was thinking startups usually is 1 to 10 or 1 to 20 that actually succeed. I haven't tracked how well the IPOs did. I did a search about a week or two ago. I didn't see huge success among the IPOs. I can't quantify it, but it didn't feel like there's in fact a new index, the Tel Aviv market, which is new companies, which therefore includes those new IPOs. But I didn't see that it was necessarily companies that made more money. So I don't necessarily invest in IPOs. In fact, in general, what we're investing in is the solid companies that have the track record already. We're not looking necessarily to shoot the moon by finding the newest cutting edge technology. Because we can get good results, double digits, sometimes triple digits, just on regular, solid companies that have been in the market for 10 years with solid growth. For example, like I showed a picture of a robot pool cleaning technology. And you're like, well, so cleaning pools, how sexy is that? It's not. But we've been able to have hundreds of percent return with this company, Matronics, which is out of a kibbutz about 40 years ago. And socialist kibbutz invented a very thing that made all the multi-millionaires in the kibbutz just by cleaning the pools with a robot, and it's going on the bottom of the thing. So anyway, they have like 25% of the robotically cleaned pools in the world as their market. So maybe it's not as sexy as cryptocurrency, but you can make a lot of money. But even things like Ami Levy, Schufel, Saal, Strauss, these are companies that can make tens of percent over a year. And so we don't necessarily have to look for the IPOs to make the money. Thank you all for listening. And if you want to talk to me afterwards, get my business card. Love to talk with you more.
Thank you, Evan. Thank you, everybody.
Take a pen.
And